Joe Mackenzie here, your watercolor coach. Let's talk about what it means to mix around the color wheel. Well, first of all, you have to have a color wheel, and I like to make my own. This is made from the colors that are on my palette. Of course, a color wheel has to have a yellow, a red, and a blue. You have to have at least those colors in order to mix all the other ones. So let's talk now about mixing around the color wheel, because I mix around the color wheel for brightness and then across the color wheel when I want to mix my neutrals. So what does it mean to mix around the color wheel? All right, well, let's say I have a red. This is alizarin red, red, and I want to make it a darker red. Then in a sense, I get in my car and I start driving. Now the reason I'm driving this way is because if I drive this way, I'm going to end up with a lighter color. My goal was to find darker color. So I start going down the darker highway and I come down to purple or violet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix violet with some alizarin crimson and I will get a darker color. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Here was alizarin crimson, and here it is with some violet added to it, and it's definitely darker. Let's look at it through the value finder. There we go. All right. So this is where I started. Then I went along the road, added some violet to it, and I got a darker color. But let's say I didn't feel like that was dark enough. Well, then what I need to do is I have to get back in my car, because I'm here, and I keep driving along until I get to ultramarine blue. And I add that, and I will end up with a darker color. It's definitely darker than where I started with, when I started with the red. So that's driving around the color wheel, and what I've accomplished my task, which was to make that color darker. And yet it has retained brightness. Now, what happens if you go mix across the color wheel would be to take your alizarin crimson and mix it with viridian, for example, which is the green. And when I do that, I will tip the color. I will get a darker color, just like I did when I drove on the highway. Only what happens this time is each time I add a little bit more viridian to it, it gets darker. So it's just as dark as what I was hoping to get. But look at how much duller it is. I'm going to bring this way, way, way in. You can see the top row are brighter. We're not talking about darkness or lightness here. We're talking about brightness and dullness. So the top row is brighter than the bottom row, which is duller. Even though all the colors in the bottom row have the are equal in terms of lightness and darkness as this color here. So that's what I mean when I talk about mixing around the color wheel for brightness and across the color wheel when I want to mix my neutrals. Because when you mix across the color wheel, for example here, if you have a yellow and you mix it with violet, you're going to end up with a brown. And likewise, if you have violet and you mix it with yellow, you're going to end up with a brown. And you can just imagine all the different browns and grays and other neutrals that you can make when you're mixing across the color wheel. All right, so that's my tip for the day. Remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, mask for value, mix for color, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.